It is the Anfield Wrap, the show that knows most of the greatest moments in football history involve Divock Origi. There is the top 5 greatest moments in football history. Number 5 is Divock Origi scoring in the Champions League final. Number 4 is Divock Origi scoring against Barcelona. Number 3 is Divock Origi's goal to make it 2 yesterday. Number 2 is Alisson collapsing on the ball. Still, though, 2018 Divock Origi rules all. It is one of the greatest achievements of not just football, but also wider humanity. It is the akin to any Mozart symphony you care to name. It is football's painted on the Sistine Chapel. The man is wonderful. With me, I have got Rob Gutmann, I have got Belinder, Bhati, and I have got Josh Sexton. We're not just going to focus on Divock Origi. At some point, he will leave Liverpool Football Club. That will be a day we will all weep. Download the app. I was out last night till after 2 a.m. I got up at 6:20 to do 5 live. So you owe me that if you're listening to this. The world owes me that. Download the app, use the tokens, play with all the shows, see what you like, and then subscribe to the Anfield Wrap. You can do it through the app now as well. We're going to be live in London on the 9th of July. I'm plugging a lot here, Rob. I'm going early.
Take a breath.
I know. London live on the 9th of July in Hackney, in Earth. Where we will celebrate the life and times of Divock Origi right the way through that show and all of his wondrous achievements. Rob Gutmann, it's a genuinely astonishing thing what he's done to Everton year in, year out. It is a relentless, in some sort of way, shape or form, I wish he could play them every week. I don't want to play them every week, just him. He should move to whatever club every week is then playing Everton and just keep doing that for the rest. They've got Chelsea at home next week, Divock's in on loan. That's what should happen from here.
Well, you know, we've got this apparent option to extend his contract by 1 more year. I know we don't plan to, but it should have been linked to Everton staying up. If they go down, no renewal. Don't worry, Divock, do your best. Enjoy your next chapter, write your next act. But if they stay up, no, you're staying, mate. He's got to stay if they stay up. I actually think, all messing aside, there is a case for Divock, endless Divock, until he's 40. Because I think we've extended his career by not playing him very much.
He's not got many miles on the clock.
No, I was thinking, is he destined to be our Choupo-Moting or something like that? But I think we can patronise him. I think we do patronise him a bit too much because I think he's quite good.
I think he's great.
I think, there's been a lot of talk. Was he picked because he's totemic, because he's a mascot of sorts against Everton? Is it in the muscle memory? I think he's picked yesterday because he's a good striker and he's the next one off the block. Because Firmino's not playing, but he's a good striker.
I think the thing, Belinda, what actually reminded me of when it came off, all Everton and Pickford-based jokes aside, it actually reminded me a little bit of his performance against Wolves when he gets the late winner there, where all of a sudden the whole football match looks different. And that's that's testament to him. Suddenly Liverpool are playing a certain way, and this player who can pull wide left, who plays through the middle, loads of wall passes, the goal comes from one, banged into him, holds it up, and then finds Salah again, and then Salah's got a bit more time on the ball. I think he changes the game.
100%. And I think there's a case as well. If Firmino was fit, Firmino would be on the bench yesterday, and Firmino probably comes on instead of Origi there, and he doesn't do what Origi does because he's another player who would just drop deep, pick the ball up where we don't really need it to be. We need another man in the box who's going to, win the flick-ons or get on the end of second balls and whatnot. And like you said, there's a real case for him that I kind of just want him to stay because he's an option in the squad who we don't have. He's something that we have that nobody else is like. And I said from the start of this season, Origi could actually be very key for our season as long as he's sort of treated right and everyone mutually knows what his role is in the squad. For example, at the start of the season in the cup games, God knows how many cup games that him and Minamino alone won for us. I think probably everyone up until semi-finals. Yeah. So there's that, and then like I said, the Wolves winner, and now he's got this yesterday. I don't know how much he'll have to say in this run-in, but I won't be concerned if Klopp's choosing to bring him off on the bench anytime soon.
I think what's interesting, as Belinda sort of alludes to there, Rob gets to that point as well, I think to an extent, is if we didn't have him, I would be crying out and describing a footballer who looked a lot like Divock Origi. If we didn't have him, I'd be going, we could do with having an option of someone who, because one of the things that always surprises me, especially when he comes off the bench, which is really weird, is he's enormous. On top of everything else, he is a big man. And there's a lot to be said for them in football. Sometimes it's what you need. Lovely touch at times. Sometimes it goes a bit awry. He's a little bit erratic in that regard. But Klopp's called him the best finisher at the club. And you can see why. His instinct for the goal is phenomenal. He's so alive to it when no one else is.
100%. And you mentioned at the start there some of the moments he's had at Liverpool Football Club so far. And that's it probably does him down a bit to say that's what he is, a moments footballer. But he is a moments footballer. And I mean that it almost as like a minimum. At minimum, he is a moments footballer because he pops up for Liverpool. in so many big moments. He's done it time and time again. And you mentioned the finishing ability. You look at like some of those goals, the Barcelona one, it's sort of forgotten in folklore how good a finish that is because of all the madness that surrounds it. But it's an unbelievable finish. Like, he postage stamps it in the top corner. I think he is so much better than we probably realise. And I'm pleased that Jurgen Klopp has talked him up all season. And as you say, Neil, it will be such a sad day when he has to go. But he's left a mark on Liverpool. And I mean that, in terms of the club, but in terms of the city as well, and doing these grants for the university and things like that, he's solidified himself as a Liverpool legend. And James Milner hashtags on his Instagram yesterday, almost in a slightly poking fun way statue for Divock. But there genuinely should be something that the club should do to immortalise Divock Origi because of what he's brought to this football club in this city.
He's on a wall in the new main stand, and as Steve Graves was saying yesterday, could he just be on post-match pints? Can we just have, rather than just to be one wall where his contributions discussed to the new main stand, maybe every surface of the football grounds would be great, wouldn't it? You know what I mean? That's why stop there.
Like a Goodison with the whole exterior has got all kinds of mess you've never heard of. We could just have Divock moments. What's the word? Ribboning.
I think just name the main stand after him, like how City have the Colin Bell stand, and just have the Divock Origi stand.
I think cut Origi's face into the grass so that his face is the pattern in the centre circle.
Get the Leicester groundsman in.
That would be absolutely incredible. It was, Rob, a game it was easy to lose your head to. I think some Liverpool players do first half. I think it's quite interesting, the ones who I don't think particularly do. I thought, for instance, Robertson, I think probably across the 90, I know he scores the opening goal as well, but I felt across the 90 he was Liverpool's best and calmest performer, as though he was like, well, this is the way these games are. Let's just keep playing our football. And then it also simultaneously becomes one that Liverpool win comfortably in the end. You don't actually get many of them anymore. And what I mean by that is, even Watford turned up with a bit of a progressive plan that involved looking after the ball for periods of play. They were using Richarlison in the air, Gordon on the deck as an escape, and apart from that, they had absolutely no interest in playing any football whatsoever. And as I say, you don't really get many of them these days.
No. Fair play to them for being that purist about being that negative. It was, I saw that in various sort of reports and before and afterwards, their formation laid out as a 4-3-3, and that's just hilarious, quite frankly. It was a 4-6-0. In fact, a 4-6-0-0, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Yeah, the plan was to be, to sort of echo the great terrible teams of yesteryear. From my relative youth, Wimbledon were destructive like that. Diego Simeone's teams can do it. Mourinho's teams could do it. It's horrible. The time wasting is the worst. It wasn't particularly violent. In fact, it was the inverse of violence because it was feigning injury. Richarlison was,
Dogs of phony war.
Dogs of phony. Richarlison's rolling around was next level cheating, quite frankly. And the time wasting by Pickford and their entire side was next level of cheating. And the referee was entirely complicit in it. He was a fucking idiot, a terrible, terrible referee. To just fall for that shit. And I know everyone's commented on this endlessly. It's the big takeaway from that first half. The time wasting and the adding on a epoxy 2 minutes at the end and a 4 at the end. Of all the remedies, the way you end that way of football is being mooted but never getting enough traction for my mind is you have the stop the clock system as you do in basketball. You say football is a game, allow an hour and a half of your time to go to a football match, but it's actually going to take it's going to last 60 minutes or 58 minutes. You've seen the stats out there, and I'll stop this rant in a second, but the stats out there that shows that, say, a purist game, maybe, I don't know, a Liverpool City, maybe the ball's in play for 59 minutes.
I can get as far as 68 with Liverpool City.
Right, okay. But Burnley seem to have made an art form of it being in play for about, I don't think I'm exaggerating, in the early 40s, 42, 44 minutes. Love to see what Everton achieved there in that first half, because if that got anywhere near 50% in play, I'll be stunned. And to me, that is cheating the paying public, quite frankly. That is cheating everybody, trying to keep the ball out of play. It's awful. I admire Everton on the other hand for realising it was their only way of getting anything potential. At half-time, they did have a chance of getting something, I thought. Well, I know we're going to come to talk on to why they ultimately didn't. But it did also make me think of the likes of Watford, bums like them. They just done that to City the day before. I think City would have got more frustrated by those kind of antics than we ultimately did. I think we're more set up and mentally perhaps stronger for dealing with that. I'd love to see teams do that to City a bit.
See, I think, before I bring Josh and Belinder in, I think that one of the things City are good at is keeping the ball in play. So there's not many goal kicks. They realise the danger of the goal kick.
That's very fair.
I was, one of my grandest frustrations of the first half was we were creating circumstances where there was going to be a goal kick, whether it's a daft shot or whether or not it's a slightly more speculative ball. And I was very committed to the idea of what you don't do here is allow goal kicks. Because if you're going to get goal kicks, you're going to get this fella.
Yes, I suppose so. I mean, there's a way of playing against low blocks. There's many theories on it. I was listening to Guardiola on it in the week. It was quite fascinating. I thought I knew all about the football and the tactics. I haven't got to at my age to a degree. But he said, well, obviously the way you play the low block is you overload on the flanks. I thought, I'm with you there, Pep, so you can get in behind. But he went, no, so that you inverse the pitch, right, effectively. You flip it 180 degrees so they're all coming towards you, and then you switch it so that you've got all that space on the opposite flank. I thought, I never quite thought of it that way. Obvious, if you think about it. But Pep was talking about it like it was obvious. But Liverpool weren't doing that first half. We weren't creating those overloads. So we were playing into their hands totally, I thought.
I think that's fair, Belinder, a little bit as a first half criticism. And this is one where I've got it later in our little run here, but I can sort of come into it now. The selection in the first place, I think, is quite interesting. The one thing, and I think he's been brilliant, so this is not one result's gone against us or one performance wasn't quite there and we should never play for Liverpool again. I will probably be in my final team at the moment. One thing that Naby Keita wants to do, though, is he wants to play central. One thing that Henderson likes to do is to go outside. And that's one of the ways in which you create those overloads. And I thought that in the first half, the manager's got a hell of a lot right recently as well. But I felt the idea that we had Thiago and Keita, who both want to come central all the time, played into their hands a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, exactly. Like you were talking about the overloading the wings, we just couldn't do that because Salah was getting the ball a lot of the time on that wing in the first half, and there just wasn't an option centrally, and he was struggling to sort of come inside or find someone. I think there was one instance when Keita was there and Salah just didn't manage to find him, or the ball did eventually fall to him. But yeah, it was just too central. I think I like this Keita and Thiago pairing. I think if we've got a Champions League final against Real Madrid coming up, I think they're the 8 you go with that can battle on a footballing level against Modric and Kroos. But again, like I said, against that type of deep block, it just struggled. And Henderson just came on as well and just set the tone a bit as well. I think that's why you start Henderson in the derby, in my opinion, because he's someone who brings the energy. He doesn't let anybody slack, right? You just go in 100%, and we, like I said, we started quite sloppy. That then, led on to what was a frustrating half. I mean, you mentioned City earlier as well. I wonder if City's fans would get frustrated or if they're as patient as we are, because it's not me slagging off our fans. I was in the crowd as well, probably making the same groans and moans. But I do think we get a bit impatient. Like if one Andy Robertson cross doesn't beat the first man or it goes out, like we after every time.
I don't think it helped it was Everton yesterday.
Yeah,
I think there was an expectation that we should just be sweeping these aside to an extent, but I don't think it helped it was the Blues.
I think there's a fine line as well between putting pressure on the ref as well, because that's what we were trying to do ultimately, and then getting into affecting our players as well. Like I said, we come out second half, and I think that atmosphere is what gets us over the line, actually, ironically, in the end, because it was just brilliant. But yeah, I think there's a generation of Liverpool fans, of myself's age, where we don't know how to do title runs or title races against other teams. We've won the league once, and there was no fans in the end, but we'd won it by January. And I don't know how to do this. So I feel like if we
none of us do. None of us do.
So yeah, I reckon we just got to try as a collective to be a bit more patient and with the team. Hopefully I said that in a way not being condescending.
No, not at all. I think that is. I think it didn't help. It was them ultimately. I think it didn't help. It was Richarlison. I think also it was a heady brew. The Everton thing. It was the time wasting, but it was combined with the play acting. I think that they come into the game with a real desire. I think that there's this notion of this is how they're going to get something out of it, but because it doesn't happen, we now don't talk about it. I think they were absolutely determined to get a Liverpool player sent off. I think they decided the only way they were winning the game was if it was 11 versus 10. They decided that, and I think that's the other thing that's just there, constant within the game. And whilst I do sort of take Rob's wider points on that this referee, all referees in this area around the time wasting thing, that they are fucking idiots, I'm absolutely fine with that. I actually think the referee does all right with the acting and the cheating in the end. I think, he books the lads.
Allegedly gets it.
Yeah. But not the time stuff. I think the time stuff's a wider football problem, and that's all football. I think he clocks this is what the Blues are trying to do, and that's one of the reasons. I don't think it is a penalty, by the way, but I think it's one of the reasons why that penalty claim second half's not even entertained. I've seen you cheat 2 or 3 times, lads. I'm not giving you that. And that felt like a vibe that began to go through the referee.
100%, and that's where I think Liverpool were really professional in their approach to it as well. I think there was probably only one player who in the first half got sucked into a little bit, and is Sadio Mane. And Sadio Mane is generally quite short-tempered anyway. He raised his hand to, I think, Decore at one point, and that was about as hairy as it got really. For the most part, it was, clusters of players, and it looked like there was something going on, but actually it was just Virgil van Dijk being in there and pushing everyone away. There was never anything sort of, no one was ever feeding into Everton's antics, and no one was allowing Everton's away end to get whipped up, because that was ultimately what Everton were there to do. As you say, they were there to get a man sent off. They were there to whip up their end and hope that something speculative could go their way. But it was never going to be away home because of how professional this Liverpool side is, and how much Liverpool just wanted to sort of wait for their moment, make things tick until that point. And I think that's what they struggled with first half. I think it's why Liverpool started slowly. Is again, it's a game that Fabinho starts quite slowly. It's a game that generally Liverpool's ball players, and I'll throw Thiago and Trent Alexander-Arnold into that. I think
did not have a good first 25 either. No, it's a good shout.
All three of them, I think, started particularly slowly. They weren't playing the ball well. The passes weren't quite crisp, and I think they were probably, I don't want to say overwhelmed by the atmosphere, because I don't think the atmosphere was actually that much in the first part, but I think they were almost overthinking their first move and their first pass. But then once that sort of settled down, probably when they got into half time, to be honest, once that had settled down and they sort of realised what was at stake here, which was just the 3 points and just the game and nothing more than that.
I'll go back to that, because I think that this is in the lead up to the game, there was a lot of, I did 606 with Chris Sutton and Robbie Savage, and at the end they always ask you for a score prediction, and I went Liverpool 2-0 and Chris Sutton went Liverpool 5-0. And I just remember thinking, it's probably not. It's off the back of the results, obviously against United. It's off the back of how bad Everton have been. I understood all of that. The really interesting, one of the reasons why I think the atmosphere goes up a level second half is it just becomes a game of football again. It doesn't become some sort of idea. There's got to be a display of dominance, Josh. It becomes this idea of you've just got to win a game now. And I think that simplified it for Liverpool massively. It wasn't, you're off the back of this great performance against Manchester United, you've got to hit those heights again. It was whatever way you win this game, you just get this game won. And we were all in that together. We just win this now. It's not about 4s and 5s.
100%. And we were saying that going into the game, is that it was so important for Liverpool to play the game and not the occasion, because ultimately, as I said before, all that was at stake was 3 points. Obviously, Merseyside derby pride and those kind of things come into it as fans, and us as fans feel like there's more to play for than there actually was. But ultimately, for those Liverpool players, it was just 3 points. It was just another win. It was just another one to tick off, and that's the way that they approach every single game and have done for the best part of sort of 2.5 years now.
I think one of the changes in the second half was, it was tempting to think Everton physically tired, but they hadn't done any running. I know you've got to shuttle about a bit playing a low block. I think they're mentally tired of that approach that they had. I think it's hard to sustain that flagrant dishonesty, do you know what I mean, in front of tens of thousands of other human beings. There's a point at which, if Richarlison had kept the same momentum, unbelievable momentum of throwing himself to the deck throughout 90 minutes, that would have been something else, some chutzpah, wouldn't it? To go again and again. He couldn't keep doing it. Also, how many times could Pickford do that? Obviously, you made the point the referee was getting wise to it. And I think that was probably in their heads. I think they're just tired of being able to, quite frankly, and it is cheat on that level, to be trying to game the whole thing. And with that, I'm sure they did tire physically as well. And don't get me wrong, it can't be.
They played Wednesday night and they're not a fit side.
No. So there's an element of that. And I think, and obviously you're going to want to come and talk about it, I think the substitutions just give them too much more to think about. And I think the little small doom brains are just done in by that.
The small doom brains in question, Belinder, the subs. I think, again, this idea of just making the pitch bigger, having the option on the outside, all of a sudden that exists from a Liverpool point of view. The strange thing is you can actually end up, I think, he could have taken either Keita or Thiago off as far as I was concerned. You can actually end up just having one too many men in the middle. When the game goes like that, you can just almost end up that they're all getting in each other's way a little bit. I thought there was a bit of that. I thought the referee's placements at times was mental.
So
it was like
weird,
it was like he was playing holding mid for them at certain moments. He was blocking passing lanes like no one's business. But you can just end up too congested in there. So it makes sense just on that level. And then obviously the quality of Diaz, Origi, and how it changed Liverpool's attack was terrific.
Yeah, especially Diaz on this form.
Don't worry.
I think there was about 4 people around me at halftime just saying, "Bring Diaz on, bring Diaz on, bring Diaz on." It was a mutual thing. Everyone kind of knew it was Diaz time, especially on this form, like I said. And I think, again, stylistically, how different Diaz is from Jota. I think Jota started on the left wing, ended up at the end of the first half playing more centrally. But then I just don't think it suits them when his game runs in behind, finding the space in the box to get on the end of crosses. But there was too many, Everton defenders in the box for him to find success there. So like you said, make the pitch wide, bring Diaz on, and like Diaz just in this form, he's playing with a different level of flair and skill that we probably haven't seen since, I was going to say since Coutinho, but probably since Thiago actually.
No, one of the things that I think he does, Belinder, is he makes them really worried, because suddenly now Coleman's got Gray really close to him. Now it feels like Robertson, and the goal comes from now Robertson's got more space in there as well. The way Salah needs to be not just doubled up on, but tripled up on. That then happens for Diaz. But you can't do it. You run out of footballers eventually, and I think that's one of the reasons why Liverpool were able to prosper.
And Diaz is one of those players as well. You want him to just drive at the fullback, take him on, because you're probably going to beat him 9 times out of 10. Like, he's got shades of early Sadio Mane in that sense of just he's playing fearlessly, and he can beat anyone and get into the box. And he might not score as prolifically as what Salah and Mane have done in their peak of their powers, but at the moment he's just a different threat level to have there. And in terms of just getting into good areas where you can get a pass off or find someone is very threatening to have in Arsenal.
Yeah, having his talent and his freshness at the game in that moment, but also combined with Liverpool doing what, I was just lamenting they weren't doing, the Pep Guardiola thing in the first half. When Origi comes on, it's the Origi-Diaz tandem that changes the game. Origi is a fixture in the box, is able to pin down one of their centre-halves and enable Henderson, as you were saying, Neil, to create...
Well, that's later. I mean, Henderson comes on quite later.
Comes later, yeah, but we're beginning to do more of that anyway. We're beginning to create more of an overload on that side, and it's no accident that the goal comes from having sucked everyone towards our right-hand side and Andy Robertson arriving out there. But Diaz, he's very, very special. And I think that's quietly one of the assists of the season. That I know it's not entirely, he didn't have in his head exactly how it works, but to be able to sort of somehow contrive a volley at pace, going back into the box, into a crowded box when Everton are on their back heels, was a stunning thing to do, and it ultimately won us the game.
One of the assists of the season was also the Salah cross. I think Salah's second half, I think one of the things that changes second half is I actually think Salah goes up a gear, and Everton are struggling to deal with him, Josh. But there's the thing what strikes me when you watch it back is and it's completely understandable. Coleman is absolutely sucked to worry about Diogo Jota. Not least because he'll know, he'll have done his homework. This lad scores a lot of headers. So he sees Jota and he thinks, I've got to deal with this. Goes over everyone's head, and then there's Robertson. The keeper should save it, by the way. He's got away with one there because everyone's focusing on other stuff. Yeah, he's gesturing to what he should have done there. Yeah, he should save it, as far as I'm concerned, all day, that it's soft. But that's what we do, and the Salah quality in that moment I thought was just terrific.
It's a textbook Liverpool goal in that sense, isn't it? It's one of those ones that's like straight off the training ground, and if when we sit and think about it, it looks like such a goal. But for those Liverpool players, it's all instinct. Like all those movements that sort of lead in the build up to that are based off instinct. And there's sort of scenarios that Liverpool create by bringing the subs on, which mean there's one point where Naby Keita was really, really central. He was basically playing as like a central striker at times when they were in their low block setup, and there's one point where a header nearly falls to him, and you're thinking like there's anybody else in the world who plays for Liverpool who you'd want to be getting on the end of a header rather than Naby Keita, and that's why I think Diaz and Origi, when they come on, have such a massive impact, because they're two disruptors. They're probably two of the best disruptors in this Liverpool squad, bar Sadio Mane, in terms of being able to occupy a man with physicality, and you see that when they both come on. And then that all sort of feeds into what comes for the goal, and the goal is amazing. And Andy Robertson's celebration, by the way, is even better than the goal itself. It's absolutely unbelievable the way he's just sort of going like, yeah, get on me to the Kop.
It is one of the great. It's got all the aspects of great celebrations. Yeah. I think it's got a wheel away. I love a wheel away. Yeah. I love an arcing wheel away run, and then he goes through a rush of facial expressions when you see it from the. It is a great one.
He is starting to lose his head, and then he goes, no, calm down. And then he's like, actually, no, fuck it, yeah, I'll lose my head again.
It was it's a really composed finish, is the thing I'll say. It was an element of, and there's a couple of aspects of this. There's one later on where the ball's around in the box, and Salah gets a good volley off that goes over. But it's frustrating because, to use the thing I always say, kick it into the floor. It causes chaos, and then it won't go over the bar. But Mo Salah's incredible at football, and he thinks, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the top corner, and it's going to be absolutely amazing because I'm amazing. But what I liked about the Robertson finish was it was going on target. You just sort of know what I mean. It was one where all that's in his mind was, I am putting this on target. And I think that you can overthink this stuff sometimes when you're absolutely brilliant at football. He almost, what my point here I'm trying to sort of get at, he almost scores because he doesn't score many goals. Just sort of know what I mean. He doesn't try and do something incredible. He just thinks, how do I get this ball into that net?
Yeah, I mean, the textbook coaching thing is to head the ball into the ground because it gives the keeper all kinds of problems. And that's why I feel slightly for Pickford. It's why, actually, if you look at Konate's goals, so they're all downward headers, aren't they, as well? They're like that triumvirate of goals. So, yeah, I think he's just a guy who thinks, I don't often head the ball. What do you do when you head a ball? Oh, yeah. He just remembered his training, head it down. But Josh is right as well. It is a very modern textbook Liverpool goal, that. I mean, there's echoes of it in the City game, in the first goal in the 2-2. There's echoes of it at the Etihad in early 2019. It is definitely a goal we work on, that one, all the time. And it is wonderful how Jota sucks Coleman and it goes over his head. Is that just another shout out for Salah's assist? It is a beautiful assist. But quietly, in this spell where everyone's talking about him not scoring as many, bagging 2 in the week, his assist rate's gone up, I think. Maybe I'm just noticing them more because he isn't scoring, but he feels to me like he's assisting almost every game. And proper assists as well. Ones you go, that's not a goal unless you do your world-class stuff.
I'll say it again, Belinder, I thought he went up a level, second half Salah. I thought Mikalenko does well against him. Over the course of the 90 minutes, I'd say Mikalenko does well against him. But this is one of those Mo Salah things that you're able to come off. And if this was an Everton podcast, there's a chance I might be saying Mikalenko was man of the match. The flip side of it is Mo Salah sets up the goal. He's involved in all sorts. He's the focal point of Liverpool's attack, and he needs loads and loads of dealing with. So you can play well against Mo Salah, but you can't keep him out the game.
Yeah, I remember I think at the start of the season, there was a couple of rival fans online were saying, oh, Salah doesn't influence games if he doesn't score. And every Liverpool fan was like, you clearly don't watch Liverpool games. And because it feels like everything on that right-hand side at least goes through either him or Trent every time.
Yeah, and often both.
Yeah, and we create a lot, so therefore they are involved a lot. And yeah, I think it just feels like everything's falling just into place with our front three right now. And I think the United game really showed it in the sense that 6 months, heck, even 6 weeks ago, that Mane assist doesn't come off, or both Mane's last 2 goals are shanked shots that go wide. And, things are just falling into place. Like I said, Mane's just finding his form. Salah's back in the goals and assists, like you said. So it feels like everybody is in this sort of mutual agreement of we're putting the team and winning each game above ourselves at the moment. And that's not saying that they're selfish or anything like that, but it's literally just there's a mutual thing. We've just got to win every game here. It
focuses the mind, I think. I think that there's been a clear thing with Liverpool. I would argue probably since January, to be honest. They've looked... It's not been, and it's ironic to say this because they're all the top of all the piles in terms of the charts in any which way you want to look at it. A lot of these footballers, and yet I don't feel as though anyone's trying to pad anything out at this point. Everyone is, as Belinder says, unbelievably focused on whatever the next job is. Get that done. We're all in this together. This is how this has got to work. And I think that's part of the reason why the manager's got the options that he's got. He's able to spread the opportunities around amongst them, knowing that they will also spread the opportunities amongst themselves.
100%, yeah. There's a focus, there's a professionalism, as I said before, but most of all, there's a patience. And I think, we as fans, Belinder mentioned that first half and the reaction of the fans. I think one of the things that I was personally getting most frustrated with was the lack of patience at times. What you're saying, Neil, about the opportunities to give away goal kicks and that kind of thing. Sometimes that lack of patience can be the most frustrating thing because Liverpool have got a massive body of evidence that patience works for them, and I think you've seen it in I mentioned the performances before of Trent, Fabinho and Thiago. They all grew into the game. Mo Salah is consistently growing into games at the moment. It feels like he just gets better as the minutes tick along in all football matches at the moment, and it's Liverpool being able to get a foothold. It's Liverpool being able to give themselves moments to go into that muscle memory as I mentioned for the goal. It's Liverpool being able to execute these textbook moves, and the reason they're able to do it is because they just wait for their moment. They wait for their moment, and then they kill teams' hope. And I think it was the Benfica coach, wasn't it, who said that Liverpool are one of the best teams in the world at giving you that bit of hope and then completely taking it away from you. And that's what they've done to so many teams over the past few weeks, and it's exactly what they did to Everton yesterday as well.
Gordon was the one shining light for Everton, I think, in terms of what the fact that he's clearly very, very quick. He's got a good touch. Liverpool were obviously walking a little bit of a tightrope second half. I think part of, it's worth pointing out, part of why there's a bit of space for them to counter into on a few occasions is because, well, effectively, our left-back scores a goal like a centre-forward at the back post. That's how high he's playing. These are the risks that you do have to take when you're coming up against that sort of side. I thought at times, if Gordon could have found his way to be a bit more direct, if he was maybe a year more mature, he might have been a bit closer to hurting Liverpool rather than just falling over and hurting himself.
Yeah, I mean, geez, where'd you start with their lack of threat? But he was the shot. If you want to take, you have to take one player from their squad. Having a good look at them yesterday, I've watched them quite a bit recently. He's definitely the one you'd take by a mile. I don't know if he's all that. He might be a poor man's Harvey Barnes. I thought for the chances we gave them, it's interesting that they get a couple of shots away. One from Decore in the first half, and I think a Wobie second half. And then there's Gordon moving on to things down the left in the second half. But in all cases, although they get in very wide positions. Yeah. And the XG on those, I mean, in commentary we go, oh, if only he got a better shot away. That's difficult. I think Matip pushes Decore so far wide. By the time he does to get his shot away, he's never going to score. It'd have to be Torres or Origi to score from that angle. You know, they weren't proper chances. And I thought Liverpool's defending was really, really good. I think our setup in the first half, our shape wasn't quite right. I think we fell into that trap where our midfielders needed to become wide men. We did not need any sixes. Nobody needed to play six. Our centre halves could do that. In fact, you could have played one centre half first half and said everyone else and played at a 1-9-1 formation or whatever. Everyone could have played in between the lines. But you know what? We worked it out. We sorted it out.
The movement then for the winner is, well, the clincher is just tremendous. It really is. You know, he is just so alive to these things, and he ends up with another really, really straightforward headed finish, but it isn't straightforward to anticipate the way in which he does. He's never offside. He's about 2 yards on when Diaz kicks it. Yeah. But by the time he wins it, he looks offside because he's that far ahead of absolutely everybody. It's exceptional. It really is.
Yeah, and in a certain sense, in every sense actually, it feels like he's the only one in the squad who can quite do that and quite be there in that way. Jota's obviously fantastic in the air in different scenarios, but Jota wouldn't have been the guy nodding in, not big enough as much as anything else. And it sort of feels like we've definitely got room for that again this season. You know, I know there's everyone saying there's even one more big Divock moment to come. Well, the reason there is because there's going to be times where we're desperate. We were desperate yesterday at certain points. We had to be, because we had to win to stay in that game, to stay in the title race. We were staring down the barrel of it all not being over, but very nearly over.
In the worst possible way, in the worst possible moment against the worst possible opponent.
Yeah, and now we're bidding to get into a European Cup final, maybe win a European Cup final, still stay in an unbelievably tight league title. We are going to be desperate again this season, and that's why we're going to need Divock.
Something Frank Lampard said in his post-match was, you need Liverpool. If you're playing against Liverpool, they'll do two things. One's a bit of quality. So for the first goal, he mentioned Salah, and then he says the second one, they do an overhead kick and the ball just bounces onto Origi's head. Well, welcome to the Merseyside derby. That's what happens. The ball just bounces onto Origi's head,
and then
in the goal.
And then he sticks in the back of the net. And I think that is if I've got a little bit of sympathy for Everton and the approach, it's easily sort of countered by the notion that they needed to be lucky. And as a footballing institution, they are remarkably unlucky. They're not a footballing institution that should be gambling on luck, is what I would say. Everton Football Club, that's what they chose to do. And in the end, you know, it was interesting. Their supporters, those that stayed, clapped them off.
Both of them. There weren't many there.
We've all known, for instance, ends like Crystal Palace away in the 4-0 this year, where they were very vociferously told by their away support what they thought of them. Yeah. Shite! Is the sort of thing that you hear. But there, I thought they absolutely, you know, to me it's striking in that the one thing they've got to build on, and I don't think it's enough, Josh, we'll come on to talk about how precarious they are in a second, but the one thing they've got to build on is the idea that they did show togetherness. The supporters didn't despise them when they left the pitch. So that might feel like a step forward for a few of them.
100%. I think you've seen that. You know, there was a sort of a turning point under Lampard. I think when they beat Newcastle at Goodison, I think you saw then the way the players reacted on the pitch, and the Everton supporters seeing that, I think made them buy into these players and made them realise that these players actually really want to stay in this league. And you know, I think we can get too sort of caught up as football fans about whether that's based on individual achievement. I think we do it with Mo Salah a lot. We worry about why Mo Salah wants to win golden boots and wants to win shiny things for himself, when actually like him doing that helps the team. And I think the Everton fans have sort of realised that now, is that look, even if these players want to stay in the Premier League just because they want to be Premier League footballers, then that helps us that they want to stay in the Premier League. And I think they've sort of bought into that now. And I think that's what you see yesterday in them clapping them off at the end. But you mentioned about the luck, and I think it's obviously a massive cliche in football about you creating your own look. I think you need enough quality.
You need bodies in the box. The reason why we get the goal is you've got bodies in the box. If you've got bodies in the box, the ball's more likely to drop to one of your bodies that are in the box.
100%. And you'd sort of think that there's somebody somewhere. There's probably a group of people somewhere that think Divock Origi is a lucky footballer. But the reason Divock Origi is constantly in the right place at the right time is because he's constantly in the right place at the right time. He's got the quality to do that. He's got the quality to occupy a man. He's got the quality to peel off, and he knows exactly where to be when that ball is going to bounce to hit his head, as Frank Lampard says.
Also, with Origi, he does what, the old school maxim about good goal scorers is he gambles. Old school goal scorers were allowed, like Lineker talked about, and why did he score so many goals? Because he gambled. He just make a run on the off chance the ball turned up where he wanted it to be. But those old school strikers weren't asked to do the tracking back, the work off the ball that the modern striker is. When Divock comes on, Divock is not asked to do any tracking back. Divock is not asked to press, really. Divock is asked to be a body in the box. He's asked to basically gamble at all times.
Take out the game if you need to. Yeah,
it's not a total freak of nature what's happening to Divock here. It's working for a reason.
Okay. They're 18th.
I know.
It was a huge day yesterday because Burnley get the win and then they don't manage to get anything out of us. They would have needed to have won the game to get themselves back in front of Burnley. They genuinely yesterday, whilst being, it's not an approach that I'd like to see. They didn't look as abject as they have done, and as I said before, that Manchester United were far meeker than Everton were. I think it's worth saying. My point here is that might be a day where they don't look like the 18th best team in the division. But they're there for a reason, and I think that there's it's going to be difficult for them to get the way out, because the one thing they don't look like being necessarily is a winning football team, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's a few sort of paradoxes in there, because I think in certain sense they did look like the 18th worst team in the division, because only the 18th worst team in the division would realise the only chance it had was to be that negative.
Yeah, that's fair.
Having said that, I understand if you're an Everton fan, you took more positives from negatives from that game. They were playing arguably the best team on the planet, and a really good version of the best team on the planet, given Liverpool's record, given the Liverpool City, without going to the Liverpool City thing. So to go to Liverpool in form and keep them at bay for 60, nearly 65 minutes, or whatever it was, you've got to take some positives from that, given the context of where they came from, and you do see togetherness. You see them applying a plan, putting it into action well. Does it augur well for them? Well, they need to win some football matches. So the other side of this is I didn't see where they were going to win some. I think, in a certain sense, getting beaten by Liverpool was the worst thing that was going to happen to them in any individual game in their run-in, and that's now out the way. They don't have to dread Liverpool being the team that relegates them. They can sort of get on with it. I mean, although I think they've moved into being bookies' odds-on favourites to going down. Am I right in saying? Someone's agreeing with me there in the background.
Yep.
I think they're near enough that it's very, very much. I thought there was no. Before yesterday, I thought there's no way they'll go down. We'll still beat them, but there's no way they'll go down.
Yeah, they are now. They are now. The probabilities is now that they'll go down.
But then you don't expect teams down the bottom to win matches, and Burnley have won matches. If Burnley continue to win the odd game, 1 in every 2, 1 in every 3, or whatever they're doing at the moment, there's nothing Everton really are going to be able to do about this. You can see a scenario whereby they suddenly get a bit of confidence and do win some. Like, who have they got up next? They've got Chelsea
at home.
I can see them getting something from Chelsea. I can see them losing 3-0 as well, but I can see them getting something. Every game you look, every one of those fixtures, you could paint an either-or scenario, really. They're really quite hard to call.
Leeds are back in it now. I think that it's not Everton or Burnley. I think Leeds need to get themselves another win. Belinder just sort of looking at the table. Leeds sit on 33. Villa are on 37 and 15th, level with Crystal Palace. I think 37 is beyond the wit of and there's obviously still 6 games to play for Villa, and they can pick up more points, and so can Crystal. Leeds, though, sit on 33, Burnley on 31, and Everton on 29. Leeds could do with getting something in order to one more win. You'd think would have Leeds pretty much back out of it. It could be tonight against Crystal Palace, but ultimately Everton need Burnley to stop, which I think is quite interesting. I think almost the most important thing that can happen now for Everton is that Burnley lose the ability to win that they've suddenly garnered.
Well, that was just what we were talking about, right? It's not, doesn't feel like it's in Everton's own hands their own destiny at this point, which is the worst case scenario. I mean, like just like you were saying, like it's hard to see how a team's gonna win games when they don't if they set up like they did yesterday and they don't try to win, they try to not lose. And I don't know how positive that will be in terms of their running. The positives you can take from it, it showed they could be disciplined. It shows they could be clever. It was annoying, but it was clever. To the extreme other end of the scenario, like Diego Simeone has shown how that style can win. You can play that way and you can win titles. So what is it now, 7 games left or was it 6?
So they've got 6 left, Burnley have got 5.
Yeah, so 6 games left. Maybe it's just like a race against time, right? It's like how those 6 games will just tick by if you before you realise your own how it's ended up. So
it's when the music stops almost. It's that hard to call, I think. Same with us and City really in the titles. It mirrors it.
Maybe if they had this game against us a bit earlier, maybe like 3 games ago, they might have enough time to pull themselves out of this rut. But I don't know. 6 games is not a lot of football.
Yeah, I think you sort of what Belinder said there is that, you know, the one thing Everton have shown in that game is a bit of smarts and a bit of discipline. My sort of concern for them would be that I think Burnley and Leeds are looking like better football teams. Like Leeds are, you know, their footballing ability has never been in question. It's just they need to eradicate some of the madness. They probably need more of the discipline. But Burnley are just looking like a better football team. Burnley, I think, have actually tried to play football a bit more over the course of the season, and it's probably backfired on them a little bit, which is how they found themselves in the position they're in, and how Sean Dyche has found himself in the position he's in, and that would be my concern. I think if I was an Everton fan, I'd be watching Leeds and Burnley play, and it's you know, it's against the teams that are down and around with them that's you know, where the points need to be picked up. And I'll be back in Burnley Leeds in those games more so than I would be Everton.
Goal difference is also in Burnley's favour at the moment. 5 better off than Everton are at this stage of proceedings. I'm not going to trouble ourselves with Watford and Manchester. That game. Villarreal will also sit deep. I think that this is, you know, that's been the way home. What they've done in the Champions League all the way through, it's how they've got the results that they've got. It's actually not a bad warm-up game in that context. You know, the idea that you're going to have to be patient, you're going to have to think it through a little bit. Is there an argument to start 4 forwards?
You know what? Maybe I think you've got to take a look at it first at what Emery actually is doing before you maybe go that far. Whether you start with 4 forwards, you've got to play like you with 4 forwards. I think that's half the problem with the first half is that we didn't play. We didn't realise we could play with 5 forwards. Quite frankly, I mean, Villarreal are hyper defensive. They get, I think, 2 shots on target against Bayern over 2 legs, score twice. You know, it really, really was super negative. We used the word patience before. I think patience is going to have to be important. I think this is such an interesting time in the sense that I think Liverpool can actually lose it, maybe unfortunately or whatever, in the first leg and still go away and win. Still go and win there. They're a decent side, but they're way below us, Villarreal. And they're a team that, if they were in our league, we would expect to beat them home and away with something to spare. If we were playing them now in the run-in, we'd mark this down as, well, maybe it's about as hard as Newcastle. I don't know, given Newcastle's form. Maybe they're not even as good as you. Maybe it's Southampton away. It's a tricky one. But at home, you'd expect to turn them over. For Liverpool, given the tightness of fixtures, I think there's a double agenda here. Normally, I would say I'd take a 1-0. I just would, because I'd back us to go and win in theirs as well. But I'd almost say I'd take a 1-0. But for the fact that our games are so thick and fast and the need for us to rotate, that I really would like a 2 or a 3. Because I think that would enable us to properly rotate in that second leg. That might be being greedy at this stage, because I still would just like to take a lead there, but you know what I mean.
We will need to take a lead there, I think. The one thing we don't want to do is give them encouragement, Belinder. The other thing to point out as well is that they haven't had a game since Tuesday the 19th. They will throw away the midweek. They could still win it, by the way. They're playing Alaves at the weekend. Alaves currently sit 20th of the poorest side in Spain this season. So they'll expect... You know, they made a lot of changes in the games in between the Bayern. I think they made 10 or 11 changes in the game in between the Bayern Munich first and second leg. They'll be able to do the same thing there as well. And I would, again, with them playing Alaves, I would expect them to do that. The point about this is these are huge games, but they're also the biggest games. And let's be clear, they won the Europa League last year. So they know how to do certain things, but they're also the biggest games of these Villarreal players' lives. Yeah. This is it for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of the scheduling, like being favourable towards them, we've had this before. We played Barcelona when they won the league. Like, was it either the game before or midweek? So they literally rotated their entire 10 of 11 apart from the keeper. So I don't think that could be a potential excuse or anything like that. Just because I also think Liverpool are one of the fittest sides in Europe. I don't know the numbers, but I'm pretty sure we run a lot. So compared to, I have this thing. I think English teams in Europe generally, compared to most of the other leagues, we can outdo them because we can run more than them over the course of 90 minutes. That they will tire after a certain amount. And you were just talking about the Villarreal quality. You say they only had 2 shots on target. From the bits I watched, they did get in behind. So I think that just shows they did get in quite a few times, and they only managed 2 shots on target. So that shows there. It's similar to sort of how Everton were countering us like yesterday. They were getting into wide positions and they were like low XG areas, right? So yeah, I think the thing to worry is basically just Unai Emery. I think he's a cup manager. He knows how to do this. One comparison my brother made was with Rafa Benitez, and he said that we didn't maybe do the best in the league with him consistently, but we got far in the Champions League and we got far in cups because he knew how to tactically set up for the opponent and for the team. So Emery will have watched us. He would have seen earlier on in the season that ball over the top was on many times. So as long as we can Klopp is aware of that, which I'm sure he will be, and we can minimise them to maybe only 2 Alisson last stitch saves, and I think I'll take that.
I think they will have a plan, and I think that's the point of it. It is the wider point. They will have a plan of attack. They will have an idea as to what they want to try. They will be doing everything they can to execute it. Obviously, for me, Josh, we've obviously got the games coming thick and fast. I'll say it again. We'll be very conscious, I think, of Newcastle on Saturday lunchtime. It would be good to go to Villarreal with at least a 1 goal, as Rob says, but maybe even a 2-goal lead, because I think what that does is it means that then what they then have to do is very different. We basically need them to change in the second leg. I think that's got to be. I don't think they'll change at any stage during the first leg if they have a defensive approach. Even if we go 2-0, I don't think there'll be some sort of sudden moment where they'll absolutely throw the kitchen sink at us or anything like that. And I think we need to, as a ground, we need to be prepared for that. My thing is, there's no point where they're going to come out and play a load. They might come out and play a bit. They'll play more than Everton, but there's not this sort of thing going to come here where no matter what we do, they're going to suddenly go, no, it's now 4 up front or anything like that.
Yeah, we don't want to get to their place and it be a sort of pressure cooker atmosphere, do we? And I think I think Gerard Moreno, their striker's injured, isn't he? Which will help, because I think they're gonna need to rely on moments and bits of luck and basically all the things we were saying about Everton before, really, in terms of one going in off someone's arse and that kind of thing, and them not having Gerard Moreno is a blow for them in that sense. But I think it's like Rob said, for me, the reason to want to go up to go into second leg, a few goals up is because it allows you to do a little bit of rotating. I don't think he would do sort of wholesale changes in the way he did for the Benfica game, because I think the way that the home leg is first sort of gives him a problem in that sense. But you'd like to give yourself some moves where Klopp can look at this fixture list and he can look at the games he's got coming up and say, well, I know I can play these lads in this one, I know I can play these lads in that one, and that Villarreal away game should give him the opportunity, as long as he can go in a few goals up, which sounds mad to say. We're so spoiled to be even having that conversation because it's a literal Champions League semi-final, but we are where we are because of this team and Jurgen Klopp.
Okay. Do you expect any surprise selections, or do we think it'll broadly be... for instance, I think Konate's going to start at centre-half. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. By all means, disagree with any moment. The fact that Henderson doesn't start yesterday suggests, I think, that Henderson will start, you'd have thought. I
think Thiago might be rested now because, what has he played? Did he play 90 yesterday, or did he go off?
I think he finishes the game, I think, yeah. Yeah,
and Man United and City as well, he played big chunks of those games, so he seems like he's due a rest. That's why I was surprised he started yesterday, to be honest. So yeah,
it's hard to call. There was a dummy team sort of rumour doing the rounds before the game where Klopp was making wholesale changes for the Everton game. It was nothing like the final team, and it sort of seemed mad and logical in the same breath. I can't see him going nuts for a game like this, which is the biggest game of the season right now. It is.
Yeah, you're right.
So I can't see him going nuts. He's changing between 2 and 4, isn't he, at the moment? I mean, lately it's narrowed to 2. So I think the centre-half is one, but it's not the important one in terms of resting.
Centre-half, he'll do a midfielder and one of the front 3.
Yes, it's the problem is that he's having to sort of target the same position. It's not like it's It's one of the centre halves that isn't Van Dijk is getting rotated. It's one of the midfielders that isn't Fabinho that's getting rotated. It's one of the forwards that isn't Salah or Mane that's getting rotated.
I think you might do Fabinho in this one.
Well, I was going to say that. I do think this is a case for letting Jordan Henderson play the 6. And I do think there's a possibility, or they take Sadio Mane off early. You can't see him leaving out Salah. I would have said he might ask one of them to come off the bench, but perhaps he's looking ahead to Newcastle. I think possibly Klopp's mentality on this at the moment is we have to literally play the next game as if it's the game that is the end of days. We're having to do this quite literally, because had we gone weaker against Everton and it cost us, it's sort of game over. So I think he feels like he's almost got to run them into the ground now until he gets to a game, as he did one Christmas against Burnley, I think, where he played them, and we won 8 over the Christmas or something like that. And he got to a point because Burnley was 48 hours after the game before, and he went, sorry, I'm just making wholesale changes because they now literally can't do it. And it may come against Newcastle. It may come maybe Villarreal away. It may come against Spurs. A game nobody quite expects it, where he has to make 7 changes and Salah and Mane are asked to do bits from the bench and Virgil just doesn't get picked and Trent doesn't get picked. It's really, really hard to call, and it's very tough for the manager.
Okay, it is very tough for the manager, but he's got a great set of footballers underneath him. He's got tons and tons of options. It is a fantastic run that Liverpool remain on, pushing Manchester City all the way. Liverpool are magic, Everton are tragic.